Now, if I get a bill and it's something like for
While I've already briefly covered Judd Apatow as a producer, I find it more appropriate to judge him based on his efforts as a writer-director, on the films that he not only funded, but also created, from the blank page to the screen. And judging Apatow based on his directorial work, I like him. And apparently I'm not the only one, as his first two efforts were both massively successful, financially and even critically. And then he made Funny People, which failed to make back its budget at the box office, and, at best, polarized critics.
I can't be a part of this.
So I realize up front this is going to be a tough sell, but I think this is the best movie Judd Apatow has made. And, perhaps varying Sarah Marshall aside, it's also better than anything else he's produced. And not just because Bo Burnham's in it.
Hey, I'm Bo.
What's up, Bo?
I'm an actor.
Oh, good.
Though that certainly helps.
Yeah. All right. Now I am.
The biggest complaint people seem to have about Funny People is that it's actually two movies. A dark comedy about a comedian facing death, and a family comedy drama about a comedian playing homewrecker. And while at first glance these two stories seem disjointed, they're actually intrinsically connected. To me, one logically follows the other. Let's take a look at the protagonist arc. Adam Sandler's George Simmons, and George Simmons is Adam Sandler, in a performance that convinced me that Punch Drunk Love was not a fluke. Long story short, Big Rich Celebrity hates his life because he's alienated everyone. You've seen it before. While getting his diagnosis, he focuses on the doctor's family pictures, highlighting his own loneliness. He has no friends to tell about his illness, so he finds some hapless stand-up comedian.
You're my closest friend, and I don't even like you.
He knows his groupies don't actually like him.
Girls like famous guys. It's a story for them, I guess. I don't know. I take advantage of it, though. Believe me, they always leave disappointed.
He's estranged from his family, and he still pines for the girl that he himself pushed away years earlier. And while the diagnosis certainly is the catalyst, it's not what the movie's about. I think most people expected this to be a story of how George deals with facing his own mortality, and that marketing didn't help. But the fact is, George is miserable whether he thinks he's dying or not. The disease just acts as his reason for this newfound introspection, and a reason to take Ira under his wing. As Eminem points out in a very funny and surprisingly poignant scene, George's life isn't any better once he beats the disease.
What do you want?
I kind of don't want anything.
So then what are we celebrating?
Immediately after being asked this question, he goes to call Laura, because, to him, the only real good to come from his diagnosis is that Laura will now give him the time of day. So he takes advantage of this to try to win her back. When given a second chance on life, the only thing George wants to do is try his second chance with Laura. Hence, the second half of the movie follows pretty logically from the first. But the second half is only possible because of the complexity of the Laura character. There's a lot going on with her. She's moved on with her life after George cheated on her, got herself a husband, a family, and a big house, but remains very guarded with George. When she lets her guard down, the combination of her first love dying and the inattentiveness of her unfaithful husband
He cheats on me too. He's like an Australian you.
creates a dangerous emotional cocktail and seriously exposes her vulnerability.
I love my husband, but it's just not the same. And that I love you so much, and
I know. I have the same thing.
Which opens the door for George to re-enter her life.
Laura, if I told you, you might not have talked to me anymore.
She's clearly shocked by his return to health and doesn't know how to process this information.
I know, but that's different now. We've been talking. What do you know?
Really?
This is so. What do you? So did it?
Because the thought of losing George initiated, and likely influenced, her introspection as well.
Just you are the love of my life.
So she's playing the what-if second chance game just as much as George is, until she finds herself in over her head.
I've been married for 12 years now, and I have kids, and I can't just throw it away this second, okay?
Because she ironically has a lot more to lose than George does. You can see her shock when Clark apologizes and wants to make amends, because now she has to face the consequences of her actions.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why the second half has to be so long. Pretty much all of Laura's arc has to take place in the second half because that's where she fits into George's story. Similarly, most of Ira's arc has to take place in the first half because that's where he fits into George's story. Ira is wide-eyed and sweet and fairly inept.
Hey, we'll have a contest so you can hold the breath the longest?
Not to mention, painfully unfunny.
You know, Ira just lost 20 pounds.
Yes, I did, all from my cock. So...
But he also shows a bit of an edge.
You know, he's kind of flaky,
guy, but I've got nothing going on, man. I'd love to do that, sure.
He's George's liaison to the rest of the world, and eases him back into being around other people. He's clearly what George was, and George is what Ira could be, and aspires to be, at least at first. The difference between the two is that Ira actually learns from his mistakes, the most clear example being with Daisy. He's an asshole to her.
What are you talking about? Don't treat me like that.
And then he has to apologize.
I'm sorry. I owe you an apology. It's really weird what I did. I basically yelled at you for cheating on me before we had even had a real conversation. So I'm aware of that. I know that's weird and I'm sorry.
This gives you hope that Ira won't become George, because he actually grows as a person. Because George doesn't seem to learn. The movie wouldn't be very interesting if it just ended with George dying or getting better. The whole point was that he examined his life and the choices he had made.
I think I played it all wrong, Ira. I played it all wrong.
And so the real story is seeing how he has changed after this inspection.
How exactly have you changed?
Thank you, Laura. And the payoff is, he hasn't. He's still selfish.
When am I supposed to be happy? Why does everyone else get to be happy?
Where I'm sitting, it seems like your happiness might be coming at the cost of destroying this family.
He's still an asshole.
You're not my friend. You fucking work for me.
And he's still running from anyone who tries to get close to him.
Supposed to do a little 2-week tour this summer. I'm supposed to do it, but I don't need to do it.
Traditionally, protagonists don't make their full change until after they hit bottom. Although you would think staring death in the face would be enough, George doesn't actually hit bottom, and therefore change, until after he loses both Ira and Laura, and he, quite literally, finds himself back where he started.
Hi, gentlemen.
I can't believe I have to start all over again.
Hey, man. How you doing? Hey, how you doing? Heard you were sick. You feeling better now? Over here.
George, second lease on life. What are you gonna do now?
I admit that the story meanders a little bit, but that kind of makes sense. Look at Apatow's first two auteurist features. The 40-Year-Old Virgin is about a 40-year-old who's a virgin and his journey. Knocked Up is about a couple that faces an unexpected pregnancy and their journey. Funny People is a little bit harder to put your finger on. The plot isn't right there in the title for you. The story didn't really go where anyone was expecting it to, and I'd call it more of a phony drama rather than a dramatic comedy. I think people hold that against the movie, but I think it's one of its strengths. I love the movie because it's ambitious. It has a lot of story to tell, which it does. Real characters to develop, which it does. And a lot of pretty complex themes that it tackles. Not just facing mortality, but also dealing with the choices you made in your life.
I could have had those kids with you.
And examining what you want out of life. Despite the first half being dedicated to George and Ira, and the second half being dedicated to George and Laura, all three characters seem to reach the peak of their arcs around the exact same time, where they realize that what they want out of life may not be what's best for them. Laura, finding herself in a stagnant marriage, looked to George as the key to her happiness, but realizes she was wrong to do that.
He's my husband. We have a family.
George, finding himself alone and miserable, looked to Laura as the key to his happiness, but realizes he was wrong to do that.
Tell him, is it me or him?
Him.
What? Come on!
Ira, working at a deli and dealing with his roommate's success,
Becoming marginally famous has really turned you into an asshole.
looked to George as the key to his happiness, but realizes he was wrong to do that.
You are not funny.
Well, if that means I'm less like you, then good. I don't want to be funny, okay?
All three learn that it's not that easy. This movie offers no simple answer to happiness because there is no simple answer to happiness. But maybe taking an honest look at your life.
I thought a lot about what you said in the car. To me, a few of those things might have been accurate.
And finding people who support you and you support back,
You actually wrote them down.
maybe is a good enough place to start. Sometimes, to smile, you just need to be around funny people.
His own balls. This is why I don't go out of the house. I thought everybody loved you.